you for joining us today for communicating the value of membership with Beth Brodovsky. Here I was worried about saying your last name and I couldn't say your first name. Oh my goodness. Welcome, Beth. She is the president of Iris Creative Group. Beth works with nonprofit leaders to focus their audience and move them into action. For 25 years, Beth and her team have developed nonprofit branding, marketing, and fundraising communication. She runs Nonprofit Toolkit, training programs to grow in-house marketing skills on staff, hosted the 200-episode Driving Participation podcast, and speaks on nonprofit marketing nationally. We are here for communicating the value of membership. It's sponsored by GrowthZone. I'm Amy Shainrock in the marketing department, and I welcome you. For attending live today, you'll receive a CAE certificate, and that will come within 24 hours of the close of the webinar. If you're interested in learning more about GrowthZone, you can visit our website at growthzone.com. There you go. Thanks, Beth. You can request a one-to-one demo to get a little more personalized attention to your specific pain points at your organization. Or if you don't want to talk to anyone, you can watch a product tour and learn all about our association management software. And with further ado, I don't need to talk anymore. You're here to listen to Beth, so I will let her take it away. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy. I really appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. We've got like a whole crew flying in here from all over the country today. So welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining me today. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. As Amy mentioned, I did a podcast for 5 years called Driving Participation. And it was all about how do you attract the right people and then move people from, yay, we've attracted people. And then ultimately our goal is to get them to take the action we want. And it always seems like it should be simple, but it really feels like this a lot of the time, that you're always thinking, okay, we've got these people, but how do we get them to take action? How do we get them to do the things that we need them to be doing in order for us to thrive? So today we're going to talk a little bit about how can we do this? How can we focus and streamline some of the things that we're doing in order to get people to feel that value of membership, to feel that value that will inspire them to, as we like to say in our firm, show up, stick around, and ultimately give back. And in associations, which are surprisingly one form of a nonprofit organization, that's that cycle that we all have to make, you got to attract the people, and then you've got to get them involved. And in all the years I did the podcast, that's what I was really curious about, is what kind of involvement, what do they need to feel? What do they need to be doing? What do they need to be hearing? What do they need to be experiencing in order to feel like they're getting what they want out of it, and not see that renewal notice come up and say, this is a bill that I don't need. And so I was listening to a podcast myself. I'm, as a podcast creator, I was also a big podcast listener, and I feel terrible that I did not write down which podcast I was listening to when I heard this. But Anne Samalov is the person who said this quote. And I love this. And I think it's really relevant to what we're talking about here, which is, if you keep making withdrawals without making any deposits, you'll eventually hit zero. And I think this is so important for all marketers, and very much association and membership marketers to think about, is that we have to remember that we are constantly asking people to take action, constantly asking people to do the things we want them to do. And so a lot of times a common market cycle looks like this. We're selling. And by selling, what I mean is, come to this event, renew your membership, join, give us money to donate to our foundation that's part of our association. Volunteer for something, be on the board, do. We're constantly asking people to inviting them. And then at the event, might be whatever that is, whatever that thing you want them to do. So think of that as the event. It may be a literal event, like come to this symposium or this seminar. It may be an event like a volunteer day. It could be anything. Anytime you're asking someone to take a specific action on your behalf, it's an event, which means you've got to ramp up, and then there's the thing you want them to do. And what happens a lot of time is that is such an exhausting process, and it takes so much effort to get people up to that bar of getting enough people to show up at your event or whatever it is that you're doing, that in between that time and then the next time that you have to do it, like what happens at your organizations in between one event and another event? What are the kind of things that happen? A lot of times in many organizations, what happens is this, I call it the troughs of silence, because you got people to the hurdle, you got all the people to show up to your conference. And then on the other side of that, you're exhausted. And it's like, all right, we're going to come back in, come internally, regroup, and then get ready for our next big push. And we forget about all the other ways that we can engage with people, that we want to engage with people in order to inspire them to want to get involved, to want to participate. And so a lot of times people say to me, oh, how many emails is too many emails? Or how many emails is the exact number of emails that we need to be sending in order to get someone to renew, in order to get somebody to show up at an event? And the thing is, like, it's not a math problem. And that's the thing we have to get our heads around, that the problem with most of our marketing is content. It's what we're saying. It's how we're saying it. It's not how often. It's not the word. It's not the surface level things. Within the fact that it's content and not frequency, ultimately the problem that we have is we're doing too much conversion. And by conversion, that is the marketing term that means getting people to take an action, getting people to show up at that event. Too much conversion and not enough conversation, not enough community building, not enough serving their needs. We spend so much time getting them to serve our needs. And so in the marketing world, conversion marketing applies to things like direct sales, come to this event. They typically are action-focused words. You'll notice the kind of conversion marketing you're doing if you're saying things like register, sign up, join, verbs, big action-focused things. They're transactional. Drive. I need you to do this thing for me right now. And then once that's done, check it off the list, it's over. They're outcome-driven. That is conversion marketing. Now, if you contrast that to relationship marketing is where the concept of things like brand awareness comes in. It's about value-based marketing. It's communicating based on what a person cares about, what their interests are, what they might want. It takes the focus off of the organization and what you're trying to achieve and puts it onto the visitor, the member, the prospect, and starts to try and draw them in by understanding what they need and presenting different paths by which you could solve their problems. It's engagement. It's the back and forth, answering questions, getting them to raise their hand. And engagement can mean liking something on social media, commenting on a post, clicking on something to read more in an email. It can mean picking up the phone and asking a question. It means showing a sign of interest into something. And in general, it's responsive. It's attracting something in and then responding to it. So that's conversion marketing versus relationship marketing. Another way that you'll often hear these two components described is push marketing. Conversion marketing is I'm pushing out marketing. When you say something like an email blast, push marketing. Relationship marketing, pull marketing. Relationship marketing, posting a question to your community on social media and and maybe navigating the responses, following that up. Right. And the thing is, it's so easy to hear that word push marketing and think, ooh, negative push or push E. But the important thing, something really important I want you to take away from today is that they both have their places in marketing. They both have values. What you're looking to do is to create a balance between those peaks and those valleys, so that you have what we like to call that marketing heartbeat. How do you pace your marketing so that you are serving your organization's needs, but not forgetting about serving your community's needs? A lot of times, you'll send out, say, an email blast. And that email blast is sign up for this next event. And what might happen is you'll get 5, 10, maybe 20 negative responses. Why are you sending so much email? I already got this. Why are you sending this again? Take me off your list, unsubscribe, negative, 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 negative. And what often then happens is, oh my gosh, we're annoying people. We have to stop. And what it's easy to do is forget to look at that same email got you 100 subscriptions, 100 signups to the event that you have. Human nature makes us pay more attention to the negative than to the positive. So I want you to think about, how do you in your organization need to balance the things that you need to put out there that are direct and the things that you need to put out there that are more nurturing. In our conversion marketing process, so as I mentioned in the beginning, we also run a number of classes on marketing for people that work in all kinds of nonprofits, because so many people that work in nonprofits come to it from a completely different background and don't actually have training in marketing. And so you kind of all have to learn it. A lot of us have to learn it on the fly. I lovingly call you all slash marketers, because you have a real title and then you have your hidden slash marketer title. Give me a shout out, raise your hand if that's you. Who has that invisible or visible shout out? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's you. Slash marketers, I'm here for you. Right. And so you don't learn this. You've got to come to sessions like this so that you can learn all of that stuff. And it's easy to get caught up in things like best practices and think, oh, well, we have to do that because that's best practices. So think of best practices like this. Best practice says the most opened time for sending out an email newsletter is Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. So if you say, wow, that's best practices, so we should send our newsletter out at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, you're sending your email out right into the belly of the beast, right? Everyone else got that same memo, and we're all sending out our messages at the same time. So this is just a reminder that you have to balance, but not balance with what the world says you need to balance. Balance based on your community, based on what works for you. And you have to try things. It's amazing how testing things can give you so much feedback for what's working and what's good for your community. Too much email is 100% a relative term. So you've got now this common marketing cycle. How do we turn that common sell, silence flow into something that feels more cohesive and is better for your community? So think about what you can fill your troughs of silence with. What can you do in those gaps, in that time in between? And there is nothing wrong with some times of silence. Sometimes it's really nice if you've just spent a lot of time marketing like crazy to get somebody to come to an event, to take a little breather and a little break. But don't wait until the next time that you're selling them something to re-engage. Think about how can you communicate with them based on what they are interested in? How can you use this time to inspire people? So think about your storytelling. Think about putting out questions. Think about offering LinkedIn Lives, Facebook Lives, Q&As. How can you educate? How can you use this time to say, what are the things that we get a lot of questions about? How can we use this time to answer questions? Where can we ask people what questions that they have? How can we use this time to level up our supporters, our community's baseline knowledge so that they are one step closer into the circle of awareness, of really having understanding? How can you ooze gratitude in this point? I love that term. This woman, a guy I know named J Love, always talks about oozing gratitude. And How can you thank people? How can you shine a light on your members? How can you shift that attention onto the community so that they feel like they are the stars of your world? How can you make things, maybe your tone, maybe your personality of your organization, your brand isn't about fun party, but fun can mean lots of different things. People come back to places where they are enjoying it, where they're getting something that nurtures them. What does fun mean to your community? What does fun look like in your language? Does all of your language need to be consistent? Is it softer, maybe lighter, maybe looser for certain things, maybe tighter, more formal for other things? Where can you show the impact of your work? And this is huge. Our organizations that are associations can often forget this in a way that, I'm somebody that works with all kinds of nonprofits, and our charitable nonprofits, they get this really, really deeply. But you want to show the impact of the work that you're doing on your community. So rather than saying we did something, how can you show it? I'm going to give you some examples of this later. But even little things like, how can you surprise people? How can you amaze them? How can you delight them? So think about this. What are all of the tools that you have at your disposal to create this integrated flow? And it doesn't have to be big. It might be a post. Ultimately, what our goal is to move our audience from information recipient, which is coming in on one side of the brain, that comes in on the side of the brain that is the decision-making side of the brain. It's the side that says, is this a bill? Do I want to pay this bill? Did I get value from this? If they sit there, if you leave your person to make this decision about engagement, about renewal, about participating, if you leave them on the thinking side of their brain, chances are their brain is going to be able to come up with a way that they can get out of paying that bill, that they don't really need it. We're very good at talking ourselves out of doing things we don't really, really feel connected with and really feel like we need. So we have to use our marketing to move them across that brain barrier to the feeling side of their brain, so they can't imagine a world in which they're not part of your community, that they really feel visibly and memorably connected with what they get from you, so that they, like, that's the bill that sits on the top of the pile that they're looking for. Isn't my renewal coming up soon? I don't want to miss that. So how do we go about doing that? So as I say, so many of us are slash marketers. We didn't really get the marketing memo and haven't really read all the books on awareness, engagement, acquisition, like all of those marketing words. It's a lot. You don't need to become a PhD in marketing. What we've done is I tend to try and look at it in three groups that are much simpler. And think of this, in marketing, we'll talk about the term of a funnel. So what we mean by a funnel in its simplest form is people start here, a big group of people start here, and they have to know that you exist. So that's the awareness. So that's marketing awareness. And that is about becoming informed or educated. And so by know, it might mean, oh, did you know that this professional association existed to support your profession? Did not know that. But it's also other things like, did you know what you can do as a member of this organization? Are you aware of how to get access to the things that you're looking for? It's really, really, so all of the different aspects of what do people need to know? And what have you seen that people need to know in order to move forward, right? And then on the second step, so after they become aware of things, then they have to care. So you've got to move them from know to feel. And this is the biggest step that gets missed. As marketers, we tend to be really good at, like, I need to tell them we're having an event, and then I need to get them to sign up for the event. No, do. Informed, do this thing because we're telling you about this thing. And we forget that we have to inspire them. We have to make them want to come, So it's about developing an emotional relationship. And this is a huge part of what you can use to fill in those troughs. So you might have, of course, you have to tell people that you have an event that exists, but in between those things, what are the things that your community needs from you in order to make them feel like you really care about them and really are focused on helping them get what they need? And you guys are great. Thanks so much for putting all this great stuff in the chat. I see it flying by, and Amy's taking a look at it, and she's going to collect any questions that come in. So if you have a question, feel free to pop it in. Amy's going to grab them. And then if we have time, we'll try and get to them at the end. And then this last step is this normal conversion. So that's when you've moved them through all this. So what I always like to say is no one's going to take action unless they're aware of you. They're not going to take the action, but they can't really do that until they care. You can't, until they care about it or want to do the thing, they're not going to take that action. And there's no way someone's going to care about something until they're aware. So when you're looking at your marketing plans and your communications, I want you to look at it like, do we have things in these different buckets? And so one of the things we often will do with a client is we map it out. We just take a spreadsheet and go, whatever the point is in the year we're starting, map it out month by month, January to December or July to June, whatever your year is. And then first, just start by saying, here are the different things. These are the different marketing things that we're taking, that we're doing for people at these different times a year. And then color code them. This is one that we did. This was an alumni communications plan for a school. And so we tagged them. The green was when we were asking them, that's like, in the fundraising world, that's like we're sending out a fundraising. We're basically asking you for a donation, direct ask. So a direct ask, that's an event, that's a due, that's a conversion due. Thanking, that's a feel, that's a gratitude, that's a bucket filler. Relationship building. So in their case, they have an alumni newsletter that's mostly about providing updates and information. So it's relationship building, but that purple is very much about did you know this? Did you know this? Not a lot of asking going on it. And the blue is the times that you're silent. And then on this last one, I because it's a fundraising organization, it's very important when you're fundraising to make sure that you have demonstrated impact before you ask people again. And I would argue that that is equally as important in an association. Have you demonstrated to your members the impact of their participation before you invite them to rejoin and participate again? You got that? Have you shown the impact? And this is the key thing, not your impact on these people, but the impact that they've received. Have you connected them with what they feel and what they're getting out of their participation? Yes. Yes. And Jen's asking, is this made in Excel? Yup. I'm a fully trained graphic designer, and this is just a plain old Excel spreadsheet. You can do it as simple as that. So now this is a question. So I did this podcast for 5 years, and every single person I talked to, I asked this question. What does the word participation mean to you? And what matters in a way that helps your organization thrive? Because as I've been talking a lot about, you've got to think about the donor. You've got to think about your member, but you can't just think about your member. You also need to think about, what do you need to thrive? And so often when I see people writing marketing plans, they either veer too much into, we need people to do this, we need people to do this, we need people to do this, or they wander off into what I lovingly call hope marketing. Wouldn't it be great if somebody highlighted our association on Oprah? Just total, out there pie in the sky things. And what we often forget, especially as people are coming up with ideas for events or coming up with programs, we forget about the word thrive. We forget about what are the actual things that we need our most involved, most important members to be doing in order for us to sustain ourselves, because you need to be able to sustain yourselves or you will not be able to exist to serve the community that you are here to serve. So when you're thinking about your plan and your flow, it's very easy to fill it up with fun stuff, cool stuff that the chair of the board said, oh my gosh, we should be on TikTok. How many of you have had to come up with a marketing tactic because somebody with a little bit of power walked into the room and said, we should fill in the blank, right? So you have to really think about, narrow down. And in our case, in our firm, we do a lot of branding work. And so we call it desirable actions. So one of the exercises that we always put people through is make a list of all of the desirable actions that are important at your organization. And then think about if you lived in an imaginary world where there was only one, where out of all of these things, and it's a branding exercise, if there was only one thing that you could have people do, which of the things that are all of your desirable actions, which thing that if you 10x'd or 100x'd it, you'd be golden. It's an exercise. It's not reality, but it's a way to focus your attention on the things that matter most. And so over the course of all the years that I did this podcast, and through all of the work, we've been in business 25 years, and there's a lot of things that we've seen, and we've kind of narrowed this down to really 5 big shifts in thinking that we have really seen truly make a difference in helping drive participation and connecting members, donors, students, all kinds of different people, anybody that needs to come in, stick around, get involved, and then ultimately contribute back to the organizations that they're involved in. And so we're going to talk about that. So the number one thing that people say makes a difference in building value, making people feel like they're part, that this is a cohesive community. I know this is going to sound strange, but it's leadership buy-in. And a lot of times that term makes people, like, if you look at it on the surface, that's scary. That's not the world we want to live in, because it sounds like what I'm saying is the leader of your organization says what they want, and then everybody else gets their notepads out to say, and would you like fries with that? Right? And that's not what I'm saying. That's not the world that we're living in. But what I mean by leadership buy-in is that if you want people to value membership, you need to rally your community around shared values, and your leadership, every single one up to your leadership, needs to become its champion. They need to become the champion of the shared values. So it's basically like you're making a contract between the organization and the members that says, this is what we need. Members are out here. This is what we need. And your organization is saying, we're here for you, and we exist to deliver that to you. Let's talk together and work together to make sure that happens. And they need to see it, feel it, believe it. And it needs to be pervasive and the belief in it needs to be pervasive through your organization. But the demonstration of it also needs to be pervasive in the organization. So you think about your leader. When I talk about leadership buy-in, imagine you're on like one of those trips, and there's that, the leader of the trip with their red umbrella held high over their head saying, follow me. If you don't have a leader that is championing those values and saying, follow me, let's get out here, this is where we're going, we are all steering the ship in the same direction, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle with your brand, you're going to struggle with your messaging, and you're going to struggle with your membership. So here's an example. So one of the people that I had on our podcast was Jen Martindale, who is now the Chief Marketing Officer of the Chicago Cubs. I know we got a lot of Chicago people here today. But at the time I talked to her, she was the Chief Marketing Officer at the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in California. And they did this crazy thing. Crazy thing, right? They created a pay what you can membership level. And I would bet to many of you that sounds absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying, a pay what you can membership level. And you're probably asking, didn't this get pushback? Oh, what if people pay nothing? Oh, what if people pay less? Oh, what if nobody does anything? What if people think it's stupid? Absolutely. They got lots of pushback. Lots of people said all of those different things. But she, luckily, was able to build the trust. And honestly, a lot of the way that she built the trust in getting this to happen is that she insisted on a Chief Marketing Officer title for herself, which I know sounds a little ballsy, but what that got her was a seat at the leadership table. It pulled marketing out of, I'm going to sit in a meeting and take a task list based on then do what you tell me to do, and brought her up into the leadership conversation around how do we shift our messaging? How do we shift our organization? One time I was on the board of an association, and I was the marketing chair, and I was having a meeting with the programming chair, and we were talking about brand and our perfect person and who this organization exists to serve. And I was explaining to them that as we shift that and as we learn who that person is and what they want, it may mean that we actually have to change our programming. And he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's this programming's over here in this committee. You're marketing, so you're only responsible for marketing. And I thought, wow, that's completely the wrong way to look at it. If you look at your organization where the person you're trying to serve and the messages that you're putting out there to them are segregated from the things that you're delivering for them, you're going to have a disconnect. Everything will fall apart, and it's worse than if you hadn't done anything in the first place. So they tried it. And in less than 6 months, it more than doubled the size of their membership. And it did not cannibalize their more expensive membership levels. And so part of how they did this is that they got leadership buy-in. They got their board on board. They talked through how they were going to do this. And they didn't just talk about it mechanically. They talked about why. And the reason they chose to do this is that the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts is in Northern California. And at the time Jen was working there was a huge crisis of housing, of homelessness, of young people trying to maintain their lives in San Francisco in an exorbitantly expensive market. And they wanted to be a museum that was accessible for all. And so they had to come up with a way that people who were struggling financially to maintain their life in this community could have access to what they had available. And what they did was they got the leadership, they got the board to buy into that message. And when those people said, yes, we believe this too. We believe this is important. And in fact, we believe this is so important, we are going to invest in making sure that this happens. Changed everything. Interestingly enough, I was also having this conversation with another colleague of mine who runs a different museum on the East Coast, and she's in a process of membership reinvention right now. I couldn't put slides up to it because she said it's not released, and but it's fascinating. And what she's trying to do is they are narrowing down their membership level. So they're, a museum. So they have like a family member and a +4 and a grandparent and a million different membership levels. So many that it's really confusing what goes with what. And so the experiment they're about to try is to narrow it down to, I think, 3 or 4 membership levels. And the thing that they're focusing on the membership level is the complete function. How many people do you want to be able to come under your membership? They literally struck everything else, almost everything else out of what is in a membership level. So they're going to have these core 4 membership levels: individual, couple, family, grandparent. Let's just say something like that. In your case, it might be young professional, experienced professional, corporate membership, sponsor membership, something like that. And then all of the things that you might normally consider benefits, but are actually features. A feature is a thing. A benefit is what you feel. So that's the other thing that happens. We get features and benefits really confused. So all of those other features that were being sold as here's what you get benefits, they did a ton of research to find out what things people liked, what things they liked and wanted to have together, and which of their groups of people, based on their kind of membership levels, are more likely to be interested in certain things. And so what they're doing is they've disconnected the membership levels from features, and they've bundled together features that individuals can say, I would like to be let's just say, I'd like to be a young professional member. That's whatever, maybe $35 a year because you're a young professional, low price. If that's all you want, you can be a member of a professional association for $35 a year. But if you also want virtual access to all the virtual events and access and a couple, it's not just one thing, but a bundle of things, they've bundled those things together. Oh, if you'd actually like to have in-person events, that's a different bundle. And they are letting people mix and match bundled add-ons. Now, this is not for the faint of heart. A lot of the reason it's taking them so long to launch this is that they've got to have the back end. They've got to have a technical back end that can manage all of this. Okay, number 2, know your audience. So this is my favorite thing. This is the thing that we live and breathe and think about all the time, because what we saw in our work was when I would ask people, do you know your audience? So you guys are all associations. So let's just say many, I'm sure you're not all professional associations, but maybe some of you are. So let's say, for example, somebody is an association of realtors. So if I would say, know your audience, somebody might say, well, our audience is realtors. That is a label. It's not an audience. To truly know your audience is to understand them, to understand their hopes and dreams and what they care about. And so you have to start off with really getting a sense of who are your audiences. You know, it's easy to think that your audience is our prospective prospective professionals, current professionals, later stage professionals, but is it? Is there, which of these audiences? So this is another thing that's important to do when you make a list out all of your audiences, and then go back to that other list I told you to make, the desirable actions, and look and see out of all of these audiences, which are the people that are taking that desirable action right now? Which are the people that are taking that action most often, maybe 6 or more times? Those are our lovers. Those are the people you want to design for. Because if you put your lovers in the middle of your circle, then everything's going to grow out from there. So this is the question you have to ask. Upon whom is your future dependent? It's very easy to make a list of all of your audiences and feel like we have to serve all of them equally all the time. Number one, no, you don't. Number two, no, you can't. You will bleed out, right? You don't have the time, the money, or the energy to do that. So that's the thing that's really important to think about when you're thinking about creating member value. Which of the members are at the center of your circle? And so this is how we choose. So I talked to you about lovers. So lovers are those people who are, everybody knows who your lovers are. It's Bob, who's like at every meeting. It's Jennifer, who has been on the board for years. It's, all those people that you can name and you see every day, and you know who they are and you know them, and you're pretty sure they know you too. You have a good sense of what they know and they care about. And so you know your lovers. What happens a lot when you're trying to really get a sense of your audience is people jump from lovers all the way across to the people who are unaware. And unaware people are the people that are at the outside of your circle, or maybe even off your target entirely. So you've got your lovers in the middle of your circle. You know what they care about. You've got people that are unaware who are on the outside of your circle. And they're saying things like, what would be great? We'd like you to run karate lessons. And you're like, wait a minute, we are the Plumbers Association. Why should we run karate lessons, right? So that's because people who are outside your circle have low awareness, they have low education, and they don't care that much. They want what they want. And if you ask too quickly, if you focus too quickly on these new people, the new different people that are just different because they're new and they're different and they're outside, and you think, oh, we have to go out and find out what they want may be so different from who you are and what you deliver that it can pull you off your center. And then you reset your center somewhere a little bit off, that then makes you become very imperfect for your lovers. And then your bottom falls out. There goes your center of your circle when you start to pay attention to your future at the expense of your current. The next place people look to research and to find out are the haters. And so in your case, haters, I know, drama, but haters are the people that have not renewed. Haters are the people that maybe came in for a year and didn't renew a second time, or are people that came to like your conference and never joined. Dramatically named term, but I use it on purpose because a hater is kind of like, they're the person that you like, oh, please like me, please like me, please like me. And chasing them is, I always joke, it's kind of like going after your ex. Oh no, honey, I'll change. What do you want me to be? I'll be that person for you. And then again, pull it off your center. You don't want to become what your hater wants to be. Now, I'm not saying never research your haters. I'm saying make sure you know your center. Make sure you know your lovers, because what that leaves you with is likers. And what likers are is they're the people in the next ring out. Those are the people, okay, so you got your lovers and they're showing up for everything. Who's showing up 2 and 3 times? Who's renewed maybe 3 years? Who's come to 3 events? Who's donated to your foundation two or three times? Once is a fluke. Once could be an outlier. So maybe somebody donated or showed up at an event because they were curious. It's only one step in from it, from the unaware. 6 or 7 times, that's a lover. Look for the people in the middle. Look for the people in the middle that are doing some of the things that you want, because imagine how much easier it is to demonstrate value, to get a 1-year member to renew for a 2nd year than to get strangers who have never heard for you to come in and join. So think of it like, that's why we talk about it as a funnel. You're always pulling people in from the top, but you have to put a little more focus and attention on the people who are in the center of your circle, because it's so counterintuitive. But trust me, when you really nail it, when you really understand these people and put them in the middle, it all will flow out. All the people in the rings out that feel like that message is for them, they will just start showing up and they will tell you who they are. So find and keep the perfect people, because the more you try and please people, the more you try and go wide, it's not just that you don't have time. It's not just that you don't have money. It's that you don't want to waste your attention capital. You have attention is a form of capital. You've got so much attention with your people, and you've got to make sure that you are using it. So an organization that actually came to one of my classes did this. They were a school, and they redid their whole website, and they are like a really distinctive form of Christian school. They have a Christian education, they have a classical education, and they have collaborative education. So the parents are deeply engaged and involved in their education work. That is not for everyone. But what they were doing is they were out on their website and in their advertisements and saying things like, if you're looking for a Christian education for your child, come to our school. And then people were leaving. They'd come in and leave, and they weren't staying because the parents didn't want to make the commitment to being an active participant in the education. And so they took a bunch of our classes. They really looked at this desirable actions. In their case, a desirable action is a student that comes in and stays through graduation. And then they went in, and once they knew that, they were like, okay, let's go into our database and make ourselves a list of the students who have come in on one end and stayed the entire time. Then they looked at that list and really started to say, oh, I know that person, I know this person, and started to observe, well, what else are they involved in? What makes them unique? What makes them all the same? And they got some real clarity on who these people are. I recommend shortening that list up to maybe 10 people and making some phone calls, but getting a good sense of who these people are. Then they redid their entire website based on what they learned about those people and what they needed and wanted. And they beat their new goal of enrollments by 100 new students. They can only fit 180 students. I mean, they had a 180 student goal and they got 100 more than that. So that's a massive, massive increase for them. Number 3, be the facilitator. So what I mean by this idea of be the facilitator, it means be willing to not be the center of the universe. So what does it mean to be member-centric? So being member-centric means making it about them, making it for them and not for you. So think about when you're writing and how often you use the words us, we, and our. We do this, we have this program, our things, our features. We say it all the time. We can't help it. It's just natural. And how often do you say new? So now this is an email. This is a welcome email series to get new members engaged and on board and supported. This is a professional association for people that are in the cable industry. And so this is just a piece of their email. So now look at all the places we have the word you. And now look at all the places we have words about the actual organization itself. So this is an unbelievably amazing exercise. So take your renewal email, take your outbound email. Go look onto your Google Analytics and look to find what is your most viewed page, the most popular page on your website, and then copy the copy that's on that page and export it into a Word document and do this exercise. You can do it online with Word like this, or a lot of times I'll print it out and I'll get 2 different colored highlighters and circle it. And don't just look at the frequency, look at the pattern. Do you cluster all of the yous into the middle of the paragraph? Us, 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 us. Oh, and by the way, there's something here for you, and us, 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 us. You know, so look at the flow. Is all of your you in the middle, or is it evenly spaced throughout with just a few touches of what the organization does? And the other trick is, ideally, when you do talk about yourselves, because you have to talk about yourselves. See the red circles? Look at the proximity of the red circle to a yellow circle. When you talk about your organization, make sure that it's followed very quickly by you, or that it starts with you and is followed by the us. Don't leave a talking about yourself isolated all out on its own, because people will laser focus on it. So this is one of my favorite questions. It always cracks me up. How do we get people to want to do what we want them to do, right? Quote from everyone ever, right? We all want to know this. This is why you're here today. How do we get people to want to do what we want them to do? Embrace collaboration. So this idea of bringing people into the story, into the decision-making process, and that looks different for every organization. But the thing is, collaboration brings together a powerful group of people all working towards a similar goal. So we talked about this idea of leadership buy-in. If you stopped at point number 1, at shift number 1, leadership buy-in can look like leadership mandate. But if you pair leadership buy-in with embracing collaboration, that's when you start to build that synergy. That's when you start to get momentum. And that's when your participation really starts to shift. So, there's lots of different ways to do that. So a lot of ways that you can work on building your shared vision inside and out, and just gather people together. We like to, you've made that list of like, who are all of your audiences. Go grab one of each. Go grab one representative of each of your audiences and pull them together for a stakeholder session to find out, what are your values? What do you care about? Where are there opportunities? What are ways that we can connect with you? It's amazing. And obviously I really love this picture, because we just did this one in August, I think. And we were out on the New Jersey shore, and it was the best view of any stakeholder session I ever got to do. So we did that years ago with an association that was a rare disease association, and they had they have a long name. It's a long disease. But there's only so much you can do with that. But the interesting thing that was going on with this association was, it's about a rare disease. Their members were mostly parents of children who got this disease, plus the doctors and people that were researching this disease. And what the parents had come to the point of wanting was, when they donated money to the foundational aspect of the organization, they wanted 100% of their money to go to funding a cure, because they had a sick kid. And this was killing the organization, because they needed the money operationally to exist. And they're like, how are we going to get people to understand that we need to do all of these things? So we put together a stakeholders group, and we found out, what did they understand? What did they not understand? What were the roadblocks? We gathered, we had tons of phone calls with them. What did they value? Why did they value it? And once we really had a good understanding, we created this awesome tool. And the cool thing is I actually did this work in 2010. And I just about 2 months ago had a conversation with their brand new association director, who was not even involved, was not even at all engaged with the organization back in 2010. And she pulled out this circle. She spouted off their positioning statement. When you get a tool that's really collaboratively created and deeply part of an organization's core, 12 years later, it still works, because it was created because from a deep sense of understanding. So we created this circle that actually demonstrated why we can't just put all the money into fundraising, why we can't just give the money and like for the cool, but that one thing feeds the next thing the organization does, feeds the next thing, and how each of these things feed into everything else. And this has been unbelievably, it's been a great tool, but ultimately behind that, it actually also created a mind shift for the organization. So this helped with leadership buy-in. So it's all connected. Fifth one, last one, deliver on the experience. So a lot of times when we're creating messaging, when we're creating branding, when we're thinking about what we want people to do, we sometimes forget to actually do the thing that we said we were going to do, right? We have to deliver on the experience that you promise in your letters, in your brand, on your website. Do they do it, but do they feel it? Are they feeling connected? So this was a Main Street association. So there's all different. I love how many different types of associations with. So this was Somerville, New Jersey, and they had a Main Street Business Owners Association, and they had this event every year, Girls Night Out, and it was good, but the business owners were feeling like it was an awful lot of work without really much coming of it. And so Chris, who was the marketing manager of the Main Street Business Association, used our processes. So he went in, so it was a previous event. So this is amazing. We wanted this event to become amazing. So he took the guest list of the event and put it through that process. And so there's a funny little trick that we do often. So say you have an event and it's maybe one of your events that you know that your lovers are there. Export the attendees to the event into an Excel spreadsheet, and then go to the first column, first name, and do a first name sort. I know it sounds crazy, but what will happen is you will see how many people that share the same first name come to that event. And it's like a little demographic gem. So in his case, the two most common first names at his Girls Night Out event were Linda and Jennifer. So Linda, all right, people, how many people do you know named Linda, and how old are they typically? Names tend to run in 10-year cycles. So you can learn an awful lot about people. It's amazing what you can figure out from their first name. So Linda, we guessed, was probably in her 50s. Jennifer was probably in her 30s. And so from there, we then went and looked at, well, where did they live? So New Jersey is the kind of place where there's like a couple of cities and then pretty rural. And so we went and looked, are we getting city people? Are we getting the little bit of suburbs people? Are we getting the more rural people? Okay, so if you have Linda and she's in her 50s, what's she probably doing on the weekends? She's probably busy with her kids, maybe. So is having a Saturday morning event good for Linda? No, she's probably on the soccer field. See how understanding your audience leads into redesigning your programs so they work for people's lives, for their behaviors, for their values, for their demographics. But it all stems from that leadership buy-in, understanding your audience, being willing to design for them and not yourselves, collaborating to get that information, and then creating something that delivers on your experience. They ended up with a 50% increase in participation. Crazy things happen. Like once Chris was able to go back to the Main Street Association and say, hey, you know who's coming to your event? Linda and Jennifer. The Main Street business owners said things like, we're a wine shop. Maybe we will create a tasting event within this whole event that is wines from women-owned vineyards. Well, people were really into that. So it comes out of sort of understanding these people. So do you have a retention rate of at least 60 to 75%? Are your events and programs selling out quickly? Are your inquiries coming from your perfect people? Do you know? And so even if you haven't done persona work, if they're coming from the perfect people, that means when you see a new member sign up for your event, you look at it and go, yes, that's great that we got that person, as opposed to, I wonder why they signed up, right? Are they coming from the perfect people? And if these are three very tactical things that you can look at to see where your problem might be. Like, is your problem with your features? Is your problem with your membership structure? Or is it something deeper in how you're communicating to your audiences? Because if those things aren't working, your message isn't driving participation. And changing things like just, oh, we're going to do a new logo. Oh, we're going to update our website. Oh, we're going to, redo a program may not be enough to fix it. You might have to go in and look a little deeper and make sure that you are delivering values and getting these 5 shifts aligned in your organization. Because these things, when they're working all together, really turn engagement into action. So I would say, I know that you might have come and said, I'd love to know how many emails to send to make sure that people renew. And I can tell you, I wish I could answer that for you. But I can promise you that if you take the time to go a little bit deeper in your thinking, maybe even just tackling one of these things at a time and evaluating it. But if you start to shift how you think in your organization about your relationship with your members and your role to serve them before you start changing your tactics, magic will happen. So that is me. And Amy, I don't know if we've gotten any questions here, but shockingly, I actually left a few minutes available.
You did a great job, Beth. I was kind of tracking your slides on my other
wrap it up?
And I'm going, oh, I don't know if we'll have time here. It was a wealth of information in a short amount of time. I didn't feel like you were talking super fast. You did a great job of covering everything. We did have a couple little questions come up, all positive feedback in the chat. I think everyone was engaged entirely in your presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
The last one that came through was just if you could elaborate a little bit on what between a benefit versus a feature. I've heard that before.
It's sort of like, what's the difference between a strategy and a tactic? Oh, like it's the hardest thing. So it's really, okay. So it's funny. I probably had this slide in another presentation that I have. So a feature is a thing. So a feature, let's give an example of a feature. A feature might be you get a free pass to the conference. That is a feature. A benefit is what having that feature does for someone. So feature, free pass to conference. Benefit, opportunity to connect and network with people at your stage of your career. Does that make sense? Did that analogy show up and like connect for you guys? So feature, thing, benefit, how people are what people are going to receive. So think of it as impact or outcome. What is the outcome someone gets because they got access to that program, to that membership level, to that white paper, to that journal? That's how you have to think of it. Think of it as what's the outcome or the impact of it. That is a feature. And when you flip it around, that's a benefit. When you flip it around, if you start using that you versus us language, even something that is a thing, if you rewrite that about that thing, speaking from the perspective of impact, speaking from the perspective of what they're going to get from it, you don't actually have to change your stuff. You just change how you talk about your stuff.
Yes. Another question that came in just now, Anne asked, can you revisit the point about shifting thinking before shifting approach?
Yeah. And Jason, great analogy. That's perfect. Anybody else that has examples? I love Jason's. A feature for them is our career center, and the benefit is a member can find a new job. Jason, that is a perfect example, Jason. Exactly. So going back to shifting your thinking before shifting your approach. What I mean by that is I would go back through these 5 things and start to ask yourself, do we have leadership buy-in to how we're looking? So for example, do you have leadership buy-in to the idea of becoming a facilitator? Like, will your leadership freak out if you don't start saying us, we have this, we're offering you this? That's a good first step, is to see how your leaders feel about that shift. Number 2, shift your thinking about your audience. Is your audience a label? Is your audience realtors, teachers, plumbers, students? Is that like, Or do you actually know your audience, meaning you know how they behave, you know what they care about? Have you ever taken the time to find 10 of them that you know are your lovers, to talk to them and say, what really moves the needle for you? What have you seen? And here's a perfect question. I have to give Amanda Kaiser, who is a phenomenal researcher on membership engagement. She's actually I have to give her props. She has a book called about a member engagement coming out very soon. She taught me this question. Ask your member, tell me about a moment. Tell me about a time that you really felt the experience. You really felt the value of why you're a member here. And sometimes they're like, well, what do you mean by that? But what you're looking for is somebody to tell you a story like, oh my gosh, I went to this one conference this one year and I met this guy. And then when I got home, he ended up offering to be my mentor. And I was able to get my next promotion because I connected with this guy at this conference because you set up this event. You want them to tell you those stories about you want them to tell you what impact looks like. You want them to tell you what an outcome looks like. So if you ever have a chance to get people and ask them that question, it's super powerful in helping you get the answers to this.
We're actually going to be hosting Amanda for a couple webinars in 2023.
Oh my God, you guys all have to go. She's phenomenal.
Yeah, so keep watching your GrowthZone emails for those and check out our website. We'll be promoting that when we haven't finalized the dates or the topics yet. But yes, she did mention her new book. And we're just trying to get our 2023 calendar finalized. So yeah, and hopefully we can have you, Beth. We can have you back too.
Well, if you guys would like to have me back, I would be thrilled to come back. Here's all the different places you can find me. If you and if there's questions that you have that we didn't get to in this, I'm more than happy to follow them up. However, I'm getting on an airplane to Peru tonight. So if I don't get back to you for a week, please forgive me.
Well, enjoy your trip. I hope you have a great time and it's a safe trip. Thank you again for all of your tips and tricks today. It's been a great presentation. I hope everyone has an awesome day. Thanks for coming in. And remember, GrowthZone.com. Check it out.
Thanks so much for having me, Amy.
Take care, Beth. Bye, everyone.